What's good, y'all? My name is Desiree, and I do reactions to creepy, eerie stuff. So if that's something that you're into, be sure to subscribe and like this video. Today's video is a crazy one. Today's video is the IG model who got killed and turned into human soup. Crazy. So let's get right into this video.
Memory, and with a victim as personable socialite Abby Choi. Methods this cold-blooded.
This influencer's body parts were found in pots of human soup just last month.
Her torso and hands are still missing. Investigators fear they were thrown away.
Motivation so obscene.
Investigators believe the 28-year-old woman had financial disputes involving tens of millions of Hong Kong dollars with her ex-husband and his family. A seventh person has now been arrested in the gruesome death of Hong Kong model Abby Choi.
Is there any sense to be found in this heinous act?
There was a heart-wrenching moment when the model's mother cried that she would never see her daughter again.
And more importantly, is there any justice?
And a warning. Some of the details in this story are disturbing.
Wealth, fame, and high society. It's enough excess to send any moral compass seriously astray. But this didn't seem to be the case for Abby Choi. Born on July 11, 1994, to parents firmly cemented in Hong Kong's upper crust through their successful construction business, Abby was quickly immersed in the contaminated waters of privilege. But instead of succumbing to wealth's corruptive pull, the heiress to the construction empire maintained a pure heart. See, while Abby made a name for herself as a socialite, a fashion influencer with over 165,000 followers on Instagram, and a model who could be found on the glossy pages of Elle, Vogue, and Harper's Bazaar, success hadn't tainted her character. She was described by friends as supportive, respectful, and caring, all traits that even those close to her were surprised to encounter in one of society's elites.
咁但係你話好似 Abby 一個原來佢咁有錢，但係佢又喺我哋身上又冇乜機心，又對我哋咁好、咁真誠呢。
Abby also had a philanthropic streak, co-founding Palms Charitable Organization, a charity aimed at helping stray animals, some of which the socialite put her own money forward to help. And it seemed even Abby's divorce was a testament to her kindness. Abby and Alex Kwong reportedly met when the two were just 15 years old, and despite their different tax brackets, with Alex coming from a middle-class background and Abby, well, not, they had a connection that was strong enough that by 2012, the two married at just 18 years old. Together, they had two children, but ultimately, the marriage didn't last. In 2016, Abby married another man from her childhood, Chris Tam. The socialite had allegedly known the heir to the popular Hong Kong restaurant chain, Tam Je Yunnan Michan, since their time together at international school. And while their marriage wasn't officially registered, if you saw Abby, Chris, their two new children, along with Abby's two children from her previous marriage, out at Disneyland, on their yacht, or spending holidays together, there was no question, they were family. But just because Abby had remarried didn't mean she'd abandoned her ex-husband. No. Much like the defenseless animals Abby provided for through her charity, she felt an obligation, and not just to Alex. She took great care of everyone, including her ex's family. A friend told local news source, the South China Morning Post, see, Alex, his father Cao Kwong, and his mother Jenny Lee were all unemployed, but Abby wasn't going to let a lack of income affect their quality of life. She was perfectly willing to share her estimated 100 million Hong Kong dollar fortune. Abby was intent on providing for the family, allegedly sending them a monthly allowance, supporting their lifestyle, and even making the decision to buy them a home, and more than that, a home they could be proud of. In 2019, Abby set up the Kwongs with an apartment in the same exclusive neighborhood she lived in.
This is called Kaduria. This is on the site of the old building called Grand Court. And to me, this just looks more exclusive, more expensive, more desirable in St. George's Mansion.
Here she found the family a lavish 1,820 square foot, 4-room condo that reportedly cost the
Wow.
socialite over 70 million Hong Kong dollars, the equivalent to over 8 million US dollars. And in an act that showed the level of trust she still had in her former in-laws, Abby even bought the apartment under her 65-year-old former father-in-law's name to avoid paying the 3 million Hong Kong dollar duty stamp. But Alex and his parents weren't the only beneficiaries of Abby's generosity. Alex's elder brother Anthony also had his former sister-in-law to thank for keeping him afloat. After all, she was the person who hired him as her personal chauffeur. And not only that, Abby had also taken Anthony on board as her business partner in a company that owned Bear Snack Pancake Stall, although contractual disputes had lost them 130,000 Hong Kong dollars. She reportedly told a friend it didn't matter. In fact, that seemed to be Abby's mindset. She would give and give and give without expecting anything in return,
So
and
she
the
was
Kwongs
beautiful
would more
in
than
and
happily
out.
take. But why was the family so eager to live off of Abby's charity? Well, if Anthony's Instagram was an indication, it seemed the Kwongs were intent on projecting an image of opulence, even if their lavish lifestyle was funded by somebody else. The elder brother's social media was full of 5-star meals, expensive purchases, and images luxuriating on a yacht that his former sister-in-law paid for. Even Alex would allegedly blow through tens of thousands of dollars, courtesy of his ex-wife's wallet, on a night out. But in reality, the family was in financial trouble, deep. Anthony had been sued by his bank for unpaid debt in 2019. Alex was also in debt, 1.6 million Hong Kong dollars worth of it. Even the mother had declared bankruptcy in 2017. Still, Abby's investments in the family were entirely without reward, as the familial bond she had with the Kwongs remained intact despite the divorce. Online, Anthony still referred to his former sister-in-law as sister, and the Kwongs reportedly continued to attend family gatherings, vacations, and certain holidays with Abby. Little did Abby know, the love she received from the Kwongs wasn't unconditional, but transactional. And when she stopped willingly opening her pockets to the family, well, it seemed their benefactor wasn't so useful anymore. By 2023, Abby was reportedly toying with the idea of putting the Kwongs' condo back on the market, an idea that was purely an investment consideration. And while the socialite promised her former in-laws that she'd find them a new home, it became evident that the Kwongs didn't want a new home. No, they were perfectly content to stay put, making the prospective buyers touring their abode and attempted conversations from Abby all the more bothersome. The person who was allegedly the most infuriated by the situation was the man whose name the condo was under, Cal Kwong. The former father-in-law allegedly had multiple tense arguments with Abby over the potential sale of the condo. Indeed, it seemed Cal wasn't guided by the same kindness as his former daughter-in-law, and past allegations involving the patriarch made this all the clearer. See, while Cal was unemployed in 2023, he hadn't always been. In fact, at one point, he held the esteemed position of a police sergeant for the Hong Kong police, and had even been awarded the department's Long Service Medal in 2001. But in 2005, he resigned, a decision that allegedly wasn't so much his own, but forced upon him. According to allegations, Cal had misused his power during an investigation when he took a special interest in the case, or rather, in the female victim at the center of it. He allegedly reached out to this woman multiple times, an interest the victim chopped up to the sergeant simply taking the case seriously, until he showed up on her doorstep in the early morning of the Mid-Autumn Festival in 2005. The woman claimed he told her he had just come to gaze at the moon, but it seemed he had other plans. She alleged he essayed her that day and reported the incident to the police, thus ending Cal's career on the force. And now that there was another woman that had the power to send Cal's life toppling over once again, it seemed the father-in-law wasn't going to allow it this time. Thankfully for Abby, she had other things to distract her from the unpleasantness of these arguments, such as France. Yep, by late January, Abby was far away from her troubles in Hong Kong, and was instead reveling in the spectacle that is Paris Fashion Week. And
Good
as
for
a
her.
burgeoning
She
celebrity
deserves it.
in her own right, Abby seemed to be in her element, rubbing elbows with some of the industry's top designers, greeting Hollywood A-listers, and even finding time to grace the cover of a notable French fashion magazine. On February 15th, the 28-year-old captioned an Instagram post of her accomplishment,
Look how
"From
beautiful
Hong
she
Kong
is.
to the cover of L'Officiel Monaco, my journey as a style icon continues." But unbeknownst to Abby, that journey, along with all her other ambitions, was about to reach a permanent close. See, as the 28-year-old was living out her dreams in France, a trap was being set for her return in the unlikeliest places. Tai Pao's picturesque village of Long Mi is a Hong Kong location cradled by sea and mountains, popular among hikers, bikers, and anyone looking for an escape from city life. And what tied Abby's story to this scenic getaway? Well, in early February, Cal Kwong made an odd decision. He was going to rent the ground floor level of a 3-story village home in Tai Pao for 24,000 Hong Kong dollars a month. And no, this wasn't the Kwong family patriarch coming to terms with leaving the condo. In fact, if all went according to his alleged plan, he wouldn't have to leave the luxury pad anytime soon. After all, by February 21st, the only person who reportedly wanted to sell the Kwong home was nowhere to be found. That afternoon, Abby was meant to pick up her 8-year-old daughter from school, and CCTV footage from the mother's apartment supposedly showed her heading off to do just that, as she was picked up by a car allegedly driven by her chauffeur, Anthony Kwong. However, when class was dismissed at her daughter's school, the mother was a no-show. She was reported missing the next day. Given Abby's wealth, the belief amongst friends and family was Abby had been kidnapped and a call requesting a ransom was imminent. But then again, there was one individual that seemed to know more than they let on. Reportedly, Abby's mother received a call from a distraught Alex Kwong asking her why the police had been informed of her daughter's disappearance without telling them. But perhaps his hesitancy in involving law enforcement was warranted. After all, the Kwongs were among the first groups police questioned. Still, the family didn't have any reason to worry. Interviewing relatives was simply the standard procedure in investigations like this, or at least, that's what officers initially saw the request to speak to the household as. But when they actually sat down with Abby's ex-husband and former in-laws, the stories the Kwong family spun weren't adding up. They created plenty of lies and smokescreens to mislead us. Superintendent of the Hong Kong Police, Alan Chung, told the South China Morning Post. In fact, speaking with Kwongs didn't help the investigation, but slowed officers down as valuable time was wasted checking surveillance footage to confirm their stories. Quickly, the entire clan became the #1 suspects in the case, and on the afternoon of February 24th, the suspicion, along with the help of various surveillance cameras and the GPS records from Anthony's vehicle, led law enforcement to the front steps of Cal Kwong's village flat. The hours the officers spent in the home soon stretched into night. It was clear they'd discovered something, but what? The black curtains that blocked anyone from peeking into the home, the 6 blue alphabetized boxes placed outside the flat, and the white vehicle towed just before midnight offered no clues other than what had been found was, well, of interest. But soon enough, the police revealed the true horrors they encountered in this inconspicuous village home, which seemingly didn't operate as a home at all. See, the rooms of the flat were almost entirely unfurnished, aside from a single couch, a table, and the basic appliances, like a refrigerator. Then there were the decorating choices that seemed more utilitarian than aesthetic, such as a sail that covered the walls and gear including raincoats, face shields, a hammer, meat grinder, chopping blades, an electric saw strewn throughout the flat. And if all that wasn't telling of the atrocities that allegedly occurred in the home, police also found an ID, a credit card, and a purple Hermes bag, all items that once belonged to Abby, now
So
with no
sad.
Abby in sight. But when officers opened the flat's refrigerator, Abby's whereabouts became painfully clear as Superintendent of the Hong Kong Police, Alan Chung, informed the public.
喺一個雪櫃裏邊，我哋發現到人體嘅殘肢。
There in the refrigerator were Abby's legs. Of course, this meant there was still more of the socialite left to find. Yet the only other items in the apartment were 2 pots of soup, radishes, carrots, meat, and a thick layer of fat that covered the surface. That's all officers could glean from their first looks into the broths. However, tests revealed the disturbing truth. Among the vegetables, there in the soup was flesh and tissue, both human and both from Abby. And with these bone-chilling discoveries, it was clear this was no longer a missing persons case, but an investigation into who was responsible for taking the life of Abby Choi. Officers were quick to arrest the socialite's former in-laws, but not quick enough to arrest the ex-husband. Alex was on the run. This development caused a citywide manhunt, with friends of Abby offering rewards that totaled 2 million Hong Kong dollars. But ending Abby's life wasn't the only crime Alex Kwong was wanted for. It seemed the ex-husband had been on the run for some time. Years, in fact. See, behind the scenes, Alex had been operating his own business in gold investment. At least, that's the lie he allegedly told the men he met on dating apps to defraud them out of about 5 million Hong Kong dollars between 2014 and 2015. The ex-husband's scheme allegedly went as follows. He convinced his victims now was the ideal time to buy gold, seduced them, and then stole the precious metal back. Alex had been at large since 2015 for bail jumping in connection to the case. But try to escape his alleged crimes as he might, Abby's ex-husband couldn't outrun the law.
Police have arrested the former husband of model Abby Choi, whose dismembered body was found in a Tai Po house yesterday.
On February 25th, police arrested Alex at Tung Chung Development Pier. The 28-year-old was attempting to board a speedboat with 500,000 Hong Kong dollars, equivalent to about 64,000 US dollars, and multiple watches that approximately totaled 510,000 US dollars. The assumption was Alex had prepared to flee the country, but as officers arrested Alex, law enforcement was already on to another mission. While it was clear Abby was no longer alive, there were parts of her still to be found, namely her head, torso, and hands. And this is the pursuit that brought 100 police officers to the Junk Bay Chinese Permanent Cemetery. Why? Well, on February 22nd, the day Abby was reported missing, the investigation found out Abby's former father and brother-in-law made a trip to Zhangjiaou and visited the cemetery. Was it here that the pair chose to dispose of evidence? Well, even with the deployment of cadaver dogs and drones, the Flying Tigers Special Duties Unit diving into the water catchment area of the cemetery, and officers searching the sewage system around the crime scene, their efforts were to no avail. But on February 26th, the case had a breakthrough. In one of the soup pots, a mortuary worker found Abby's ribs, hair, and skull. With this discovery, the police felt they had enough evidence to charge Alex, Anthony, and Kao with taking Abby's life. And although the mother dodged the same charges her sons and husband were facing, she faced her own. While officers didn't have the evidence to say Jenny Lee was directly involved in taking Abby Cho's life, she was charged for leading astray the course of justice by allegedly destroying evidence during the investigation that could have implicated her in the crime. But just when it seemed like the suspects in the case were set in stone, another arrest was made. On February 26th, law enforcement arrested a 47-year-old masseuse for her alleged connection in the case. According to law enforcement, the woman by the nickname Young Young had been the mistress to the 65-year-old Cao Kong for the past 6 months. And while an affair was hardly grounds for an arrest, being an accessory to a crime surely was. According to law enforcement, Young Young had allegedly helped Cao rent the village flat where Abby's life was taken, and was also suspected of harboring Alex in Arch Sky Tower, a luxury flat in West Cologne, while he was on the run. And the masseuse wasn't the only one who was connected to the crime. A 41-year-old man named Lam Shun was also arrested for allegedly arranging the yacht for Alex in exchange for $300,000. And finally, there was the arrest of 29-year-old Irene Pun Hao Yin, a fellow influencer with 35,000 followers at the time. And career wasn't the only way Irene and Abby's paths converged. She was also friends with Alex. In fact, She was such a close friend to Abby's ex-husband that she allegedly aided in his failed escape act.
The woman had allegedly tried to help Kwong flee to Macau by contacting yacht rental agent Lam Shun, who is also a suspect in the case.
Since their arrest, all 3 suspects have been granted bail. However, all are barred from leaving Hong Kong and must continue to report to the police. The court is also subject to reverse their decision in light of new evidence. So, where does all this leave this case? Well, law enforcement is still looking for the evidence that was missing from the crime scene. On February 28th, they combed through a landfill after CCTV footage from Tai Pao village caught a man carrying bags from a flat to a refuse collection point the day after Abby was reported missing. From this location, rubbish is taken to the Northeast New Territories landfill in Tai Kau Ling. According to the superintendent of the Hong Kong police, Alan Chung, this meant the landfill could hold valuable evidence, whether that was items that belonged to Abby, like her phone, or the parts that were still missing of the socialite herself.
The torso area, the hand, those are still missing. So we believe the suspect have already disposed of the body part already.
As for the crime, Alan Chung has described the way Abby's life was taken as premeditated and well-planned. According to the findings of the investigations, it's believed when Abby was picked up by Anthony Kwong on February 21st, the chauffeur had other plans for his former sister-in-law that didn't involve picking her daughter up from school. And there was a telling injury found on Abby's skull that provided insight into what might have occurred during that drive.
There's a hole on the right side rear on the skull. So the pathologists believe that should be the fatal attack on the victim.
This hole, along with the crimson splatters in the vehicle that have since been confirmed to be Abby's vital fluid, suggested her life could have been taken on the drive to the village home, and possibly by Alex, who many believe was in the vehicle. However, the exact time of Abby's passing is still under investigation. But what about motive? Well, while the Kadoorie Hill condo was under Cao Kwong's name, that wasn't the only reason that the Kwongs could have felt their lives would be better with Abby gone. See, since Abby's marriage to Chris Tam wasn't registered, this implied her 2 children she had with Alex would inherit her fortune once she passed away. And since they were minors, that money would be placed in the hands of one person, Alex Kwong. It was a scheme, all right, but one the Kwongs allegedly failed to pull off. On February 27th, the 4 members of the family appeared in court where they were denied bail. The prosecution applied for a 10-week adjournment, giving time to further investigate forensics and evidence taken from the village flat, as well as examine mobile conversations. Recently, Abby's former mother-in-law applied for bail a second time. She was rejected again, meaning she will remain behind bars with the rest of the Kwongs for the time being. Alex Kwong was also being charged with 7 counts of theft from May 2013 to January 2015, including 39 necklaces, 32 bracelets, 13 gold bars, 102 gold grains, 6 pendants, and 10 tails of gold. The prosecution has also stated bail jumping could also be added to his list of charges. The family will be back in court on July 31st for their 3rd pre-trial hearing. But of course, this crime didn't only affect the lives of the suspects who allegedly committed this gruesome act. When a life was taken as callously as Abby's was, there's no telling the depths of trauma those who surrounded the socialite would experience. Her friends, who couldn't find a bad word to say about Abby's character, were struggling with the loss.
I can't imagine that a person who is so good, so full of love, so innocent, a person who never does anything bad, would be like this.
係啊，我去到我而家我都唔係好 OK， 瞓唔到覺啦。
My heart is still heavy, I can't sleep.
And even the villagers where the crime took place were finding it difficult to move past the dark deed strangers had carried out in their hometown. To bring a calm to the village and Abby's spirit, the community came together to perform a Taoist ceremony outside the home. Village head Chan Kwok Ying spoke to the South China Morning Post about the desired outcome for the ritual.
可以做咗呢場法事之後咧，讓我哋村民大家覺得心安下啦，同埋死者可以安息啦。
Family and friends of Abby also visited the scene of the crime to take part in a Taoist ceremony and pay their respects. Among those that attended, Abby's mother and husband, Chris Tam, arrived holding hands. During the ritual, the grief Abby's mother felt was finally put into words.
I can't even imagine.
Another grieving family member also shared her feelings. Aside from this ceremony, a formal vigil has been set for June 18th. And while the missing pieces of Abby have yet to be found, a source close to the family told the South China Morning Post that the Choi's plan to recreate her face through 3D printing to give relatives a chance to mourn, just one of the ways the family is putting back together what was cruelly torn apart. But what about Abby's now widowed husband and her children? How had the familial unit coped with the absence of such a pivotal force in their lives? Since his wife's passing, Chris Tam has vowed to take care of her 2 children from her marriage to Alex Kwong. With regards to Abby, Chris told The Standard, "She was a kind-hearted person who always wanted to help others, and she had always supported and loved me. People who become family members and friends with her are blessed." Unfortunately, the Kwongs took this blessing for granted. A masquerade is all fun and games for a night of make-believe, but when the party ends, it's time to go back to reality. The problem in the case of Abby Choi was the Kwongs couldn't bear to put their masks down. The family was set on keeping up their facade of grandeur, even if that meant allegedly going to the extremes of taking the life of the one person who funded their lifestyle, and in turn, robbing themselves and Abby of the futures they thought were promised.
All suspects related to the grisly murder of socialite Abby Choi have been apprehended, according to the prosecution.
This is the story of Abby Choi.
Wow. Wow. I hope that they get the worst punishment ever. It's disgusting what people will do for money. Seriously. Like, she was such a beautiful person in and out. It's like, how could you betray her like that? It's just so mind-blowing. Like, I feel so bad for her family. Like, it's sad when someone dies, but it's even more sad when a beautiful soul is no longer with us. But RIP, and prayers to her family. And I hope them evil, wicked people get everything they deserved. But if you made it to the end of this video with me, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more crazy content. Be safe out here. Peace.